Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 84.
Imagine a teenager, right, taking a pop quiz where um, a single wrong synonym doesn't just mean a failing grade.
Oh, it means so much more than that.
Exactly. It means his entire extended family could eventually lose their wealth, their titles, their political protection. I mean, literally their very survival is on the line.
Yeah, the stakes are just unimaginably high.
Right. And we are not talking about a hypothetical scenario here. I want you to think of this household, the Jia family, as this massive convoluted corporate empire, right? But one that's experiencing a brutal succession crisis.
Right, but operating entirely under the polite veneer of an endless family reunion.
Yes, exactly. An endless, incredibly tense family gathering. We have sources here detailing severe medical emergencies, the agonizing mechanics of standardized testing, covert, high society matchmaking, and honestly, calculated household destruction.
And approaching this source material really requires us to look past the surface level narrative. This text is essentially a masterclass in reading the subtext of rigid social hierarchies.
Which is totally my favorite part of this.
Right. How immense privilege utterly fails to shield these characters from, well, deep psychological stress.
It doesn't protect them at all.
Not even a little. We'll look at the specific ways education was weaponized and, perhaps most importantly, how the marginalized members of this household find subtle, destructive ways to fight back.
Those trapped at the bottom of the ladder, right?
Exactly. Fighting back against a system that completely ignores them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I want you, the listener, to set aside any modern notions of wealth equaling relaxation.
Oh, definitely. Throw that idea right out.
The baseline level of stress in the Jia family compound is just crushing. And we see the immediate physical toll of that stress in the very first dramatic event in our sources.
Yeah, it starts off intense.
It really does. We are introduced to Sue Ant. She's a senior woman in the family network, and she falls violently ill.
Out of nowhere, basically.
Right. The text diagnoses her with a condition where let me make sure I have the phrasing right, her liver keek is rushing upwards.
Yes, liver key rushing upwards.
And this results in severe agonizing pain in her left rib. And what's wild is the source doesn't present this as an infection or a virus or anything like that.
No, not at all.
This illness is directly, literally caused by a social interaction.
Which is such a fascinating medical paradigm.
It's crazy. She is infuriated by her new daughter-in-law, a woman named Jingui, who has just thrown this massive disruptive tantrum.
Right, and the causality here gives us a profound look into the intersection of traditional medical paradigms and, well, the lived experience of women in this aristocracy.
Okay, break that down for me. How does a tantrum cause rib pain?
So in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is the organ system responsible for the smooth flow of emotions.
Okay.
And it is particularly vulnerable to anger, frustration, and resentment. When a person experiences a sudden, intense bout of fury that they cannot express or resolve, that vital energy, it stagnates.
I see.
Or as the text describes it, rebels and rushes upward. This isn't viewed as a metaphor at all. It is an acute physiological crisis causing palpable, localized pain.
Wow. Well, let me push back on something here, though.
Sure.
Sunon is an incredibly wealthy matriarch, right? She has servants. She has massive status. Why can't she just kick this daughter-in-law out, or at least reprimand her into submission?
You'd think she could, right?
Yeah. I mean, if she has all this power, why is she swallowing her anger to the point of literal physical collapse?
Because her power is economic and generational, but it is not absolute when it comes to the rigid structures of marriage and propriety.
Ah, okay. The rules get in the way.
Exactly. Jingi is now legally and socially bound to her son, and the son is the primary vector of the family's future.
Right, he's the heir.
Yes. For a mother-in-law to wage an open, screaming war against a daughter-in-law who is willing to abandon all social decorum, which Jingi does by throwing this tantrum, it puts Zian in an impossible position.
She can't stoop to her level.
Precisely. She is bound by the rules of aristocratic dignity. Jingi is entirely ignoring them. Zhu Ant cannot descend to that level without humiliating her own family name.
So she's trapped by her own status.
She really is. The social constraint completely blocks the emotional outlet, and so the body just absorbs the blow.
The body keeps the score.
Exact.
But, like in an 18th century context, and the immediate response to this medical crisis tells us even more about the family dynamics, I think.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Her daughter, Bachai, steps in. And she doesn't panic at all. She doesn't even wait for a doctor to be summoned.
She just takes over.
She completely takes control of the room. She orders the brewing of a strong bowl of uncaria, which is hookvine, right?
Yes, hooked
And
on.
then she and a servant named Quilling physically massage her mother to get the qi flowing properly again.
And the pharmacological choice of Uncaria is highly specific here.
Really? How so?
In traditional medicine, hookvine is utilized specifically to extinguish internal wind and calm the liver. It's essentially an antispasmodic.
Oh, wow. So she knows exactly what she's doing.
Qiaojie knows exactly what is happening to her mother's body and knows the precise botanical intervention required to lower that rising rebellious energy.
She is acting as the ultimate crisis manager.
She really is.
Reading her reaction, I couldn't help but think of, that one heavily burdened, over-responsible sibling in every modern family.
Oh yeah, everyone knows that person.
Right. The one who has to act as the amateur therapist and manage the massive public relations disaster when the family dynamics explode. She just quietly, efficiently cleans up the wreckage that her brother's terrible marriage has caused.
And the text doesn't just praise her competence either. It highlights the profound emotional cost of it.
Right. There's that specific line in the source. As Yu Aunt is lying there, receiving this treatment from her daughter, she is feeling, quote, both sad and angry.
Both sad and angry, yes.
The anger is obviously directed at the daughter-in-law, but the sadness is directed at Qiaojie.
That phrase is really the emotional core of the scene. Yu Aunt is mourning her daughter's lost youth.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. She recognizes that Qiaojie's incredible competence, her forbearance, her ability to instantly diagnose and treat a psychosomatic illness is not a natural state for a young woman.
It's a survival mechanism.
Exactly. It is an adaptation to a toxic environment. Qiaojie has been forced into premature maturity. She has to be the steady hand because her brother is incompetent and his wife is volatile.
Junair realizes that her perfect daughter is only perfect because the family's dysfunction demands it.
Which is a devastating realization for a parent. So devastating. And what strikes me is that this physical, crushing manifestation of stress isn't limited to the women navigating the domestic sphere.
Not at all.
Right. The women's bodies break down from the lack of structural power, but the men who supposedly hold all the power are equally trapped.
They are completely beholden to the imperial system.
And they take the existential terror of that system and project it entirely onto the next generation.
Which perfectly transitions us to the engine driving the second major event in our sources.
The dreaded pop quiz.
Yes. The men's anxiety doesn't manifest as left rib pain. It manifests as absolute, unyielding academic pressure.
Which brings us to Baoyu. He has just finished dinner, right? He's in his private quarters, presumably relaxing, when he feels what the text describes as a muffled thunder.
Such a great phrase. Muffled thunder.
It really paints a picture. His father, Qiaojie, unexpectedly summons him to his private study to review his homework.
And the text notes Baoyu has been dodging this for 2 months. 2 months. Because his tutors warned him his writing wasn't good enough yet. Now, dragging your kid into a study after dinner for a pop quiz on ancient philosophy seems intense.
Highly intense.
So I have to ask, is Qiaojie just being an abusive helicopter parent here? Or is there a larger structural reason for this level of dread?
We really cannot view this through the lens of modern parenting. To understand Qiaojie's severity, we must understand the mechanics of the Bagu Wen, the eight-legged essay.
Okay, tell me about the eight-legged essay.
Well, this is not a creative writing assignment. It is the absolute core of the imperial examination system.
The standardized testing of the era.
Exactly. The Jia family's wealth, their massive compound, their servants, their social standing, all of it relies on imperial favor and bureaucratic power.
It's not just old money that lasts forever.
No, inherited titles degrade over time. The only way to replenish the family's political capital is for the sons to pass these impossibly difficult standardized tests and secure official positions in the government.
So Qiaojie isn't looking at a teenager who is just avoiding his homework.
No, he is looking at the potential collapse of his entire lineage.
Wow. That puts a lot of pressure on a homework check.
Precisely. If Baoyu fails, the family eventually falls. And Baoyu is notoriously uninterested in Orthodox Confucian studies. He much prefers poetry and the company of his female cousins.
So Qiaojie's harshness is born of sheer existential panic.
Total panic.
Let's look at the specific essay prompts they discuss, because the sources provide the exact details, and I think they reveal just how rigid this intellectual architecture was.
Let's do it.
So Baoyu brings his draft for the first prompt, which is a quote from Confucius. At 15, I had my mind bent on learning.
Right.
The essay requires an opening section, known as breaking the topic. Baoyu's original draft used the word youth, the character Yu.
Whoa.
But his tutor crossed that out and replaced it with 15 Qiaojie.
Yes, and Qiaojie violently agrees with the tutor.
He does. He criticizes Bao Yu's choice of the word youth as lacking a scholar's ambition. Why does this single synonym trigger such a harsh rebuke? I mean, 15 is a youth, right?
Because the eight-legged essay demands absolute chronological and philosophical precision.
It's not about general vibes.
Not at all. It isn't asking for a general reflection on childhood education. The prompt refers to a very specific timeline laid out by Confucius in the Analects, where he details the stages of his moral evolution.
Oh, like a step-by-step guide.
Exactly. At 15, bent on learning, at 30, standing firm, at 40, having no doubts, and so forth.
So it's a highly specific philosophical autobiography.
Yes. And by using the word youth, which could broadly mean a child of 5 or a teenager of 16, Bai Yu is blurring the boundaries of the text.
And blurring boundaries is bad.
In this academic system, a blurred boundary is not a stylistic choice. It is evidence of a sloppy, undisciplined mind. To Qiaojie, if Bai Yu cannot isolate the exact chronological threshold of Confucian learning, he lacks the rigorous analytical machinery required to govern a province or manage state affairs.
The technicalities are brutal. You miss one word and you're suddenly unfit for government.
That's how they viewed it, yes.
And then they move to a second essay based on the prompt. Not to be upset when others do not understand him. And here, Qiaojie attacks the structure itself.
Right, he tells Bai Yu he is violating the strict boundaries of the essay format.
He says he's blending the first part of the argument with the second part. The legs of the eight-legged essay have to perfectly balance and mirror each other, and Bao Yu is muddling them up.
He is failing to demonstrate the architectural symmetry that the examiners demand. It's almost mathematical.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Qiaojie flips through the papers, notices another prompt. Then it turns to Mosey and realizes Bao Yu hasn't even begun to study this deeply.
A huge misstep.
Now, Mosey is an interesting pivot in the text. Why is Mosey considered a difficult or advanced topic in this context?
So Mosey was an ancient philosopher whose teachings often rivaled Confucianism.
Like a competitor.
Very much so. He advocated for universal love and utilitarianism, which sharply contrasted with the Confucian emphasis on strict familial hierarchy and ritual.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, in the context of an examination based heavily on Orthodox Confucianism, having to write an essay that analyzes or critiques heterodox thought like Mosey's requires a highly sophisticated grasp of comparative philosophy.
You have to know the enemy to beat the enemy.
Exactly. You have to understand the opponent's argument perfectly in order to dismantle it using orthodox principles.
And realizing Bai Yu isn't prepared for this at all, Qiaojie decides to test his raw capability.
He goes off script.
Right. He throws out a completely new, unstudied prompt from a past exam, only the scholar can, and demands that Bao Yu formulate an original opening line right there on the spot.
No preparation whatsoever.
None. Just improvise the philosophical foundation of an essay under the glaring eyes of a terrified, angry father.
It is the ultimate test of intellectual reflexes.
So Bao Yu thinks for a moment and then delivered this line. He says, "The world is not entirely made up of scholars, and those without property who can maintain their principles are few."
A fascinating response.
It really is.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, the text says, Qiaojie actually nods at this. He accepts it. I've heard this so fascinating. Why does this specific, rather bleak observation satisfy the strict patriarch?
Because it demonstrates an acute awareness of material reality.
It's grounded.
Very grounded. Bai Yu is essentially stating that moral philosophy is easy for the wealthy. It is easy for a scholar with a guaranteed income to speak of high principles.
Sure, when your basic needs are met.
Exactly. But for the vast majority of the population, those without property maintaining strict moral codes in the face of poverty and starvation is exceedingly rare.
It's an incredibly pragmatic, almost cynical worldview for a teenager.
It is deeply pragmatic, and that is exactly what Qiaojie wants to see.
He doesn't want a dreamer.
He doesn't need Bao Yu to be a naive idealist. He needs Bao Yu to understand how power, economics, and human nature actually function in the real world.
Because that's what government is.
Exactly. By acknowledging that property dictates the capacity for principle, Bai Yu proves he isn't just a poet with his head in the clouds. He understands the mechanics of society.
That nod from Qiaojie, it's a profound moment of relief, isn't it?
It really is. He sees that his son actually possesses the cynical machinery necessary to survive the political arena.
The father isn't proud that the son is pure. He's relieved The son understands the world is compromised.
That's a great way to put it.
And this requirement for Baiyu to be politically and practically useful isn't solely about the civil service exams. It directly feeds into the next major pressure point in the sources.
The marriage market.
Yes, the marriage market. Because a son with a sharp, pragmatic mind is a highly valuable commodity, and the maneuvering to secure his future is already well underway behind the scenes.
Oh, the marriage negotiations in these aristocratic circles are essentially high-level diplomatic treaties.
Like corporate mergers.
Very much like that. The stakes involve the merging of vast fortunes, political alliances, and the biological continuation of the lineage itself.
What's compelling about the source material here is the generational clash regarding what makes a good match. We see a sharp division between the Dowager Baiyu's grandmother and the supreme authority of the household, and Qiaojie.
A very sharp division.
Right. The Dowager openly declares her criteria for Baiyu's future wife. She says she does not care about the girl's family wealth, and she does not care about their political status.
Which is quite a statement.
It is. She explicitly states she only wants a girl with a good temperament and a proper appearance.
This is a fascinating declaration because it reveals the absolute zenith of privilege.
How so?
Only a family whose wealth and status are seemingly unassailable can afford to disregard those factors in a marriage alliance. The Dowager is speaking from a position of supreme confidence in the Jia family's standing.
She feels they are untouchable.
Right. She doesn't feel they need anything from anyone else.
So Qiaojie, who we just saw sweating over his son's exam prospects, immediately pushes back. He is actively terrified of their precarious position.
He sees the cracks in the foundation.
He really does. He worries aloud that Baiyu is neither weed nor crop, meaning he hasn't proven his utility yet. Qiaojie argues that marrying Baiyu to a good family now, before Baiyu has passed his exams or secured a position, might ruin the girl's life.
He views his son as an undervalued asset that shouldn't be traded yet.
He views the marriage market completely transactionally.
He believes the Jia family must bring demonstrable, ongoing value to the alliance, not just rely on past glory. He sees Baiyu's lack of academic success as a huge liability that makes them unworthy of a high-status match right now.
And the Dowager's response is to fiercely defend her grandson. She argues that his honesty and appearance are more than enough, and then, I love this, she completely humbles Qiaojie in front of the entire family.
It is a brilliant tactical move.
It's like a grandmother humbling her strict CEO son at Thanksgiving dinner. She reminds everyone that when Qiaojie was young, his temperament was twice as erratic as Baiyu's, and he only stabilized after he was married off.
By bringing up his own chaotic youth, she strips him of his authority to judge Baiyu. She literally uses his own history to silence his objections.
Checkmate.
Exactly. It reinforces the absolute hierarchical power of age and generation in the society. Qiaojie may terrorize his son in the study, but in the family hall, he is still a subordinate to his mother.
He has to swallow the humiliation and just defer to her judgment.
He has no other choice.
But while they're having this internal debate, the external world is making its moves. We are introduced to two characters, Wang Erdiao and Zhan Guang.
These guys are essentially professional sycophants.
Right, hangers-on who survive by attaching themselves to the Jia family. And they approach Qiaojie with a proposal from an external party, the Zhang family.
And the way they pitch this proposal is highly revealing of the economic anxieties running beneath the surface of the aristocracy.
They present the Zhang family as an incredible catch. The text describes the Zhangs as possessing wealth of tens of thousands.
Massive wealth.
Yeah. And they have a single child, a daughter who has been highly sheltered and given a basic education. So, on the surface, they are offering Baiyu access to a massive, undivided fortune.
But there is a catch.
A huge catch. There is a structural demand attached to this proposal that changes the entire nature of the deal.
Yes, the Zhang family demands a metrolocal marriage.
Okay, unpack that term for us. Metrolocal marriage.
They require the son-in-law to move into their household.
Oh, wow.
They frame it as a way to protect their precious only daughter from having to endure the strict rules of a traditional mother-in-law, which was the standard experience for a new bride. We saw how bad that can be with Zhu Aunt and Jingyi.
Right, they want to keep her safe at home. To a modern listener, marrying into a wealthy family and moving into their mansion might sound like a lateral move or even a beneficial one.
A great deal, really.
Yeah. But the reaction for the Jia family tells us this is not a friendly offer at all. The Dowager completely rejects it. Why is a metrolocal marriage such a profound insult to a family like the Jias?
because it strikes at the very foundation of their identity, which is patrilineal continuity.
Okay.
In this patriarchal system, a woman marries out of her family and into her husband's lineage. Her children carry his name, and her primary duty is to his ancestors. A metrolocal marriage, a live-in son-in-law, inverts this entirely.
It flips the script.
Completely.
Yeah.
It was a practice almost exclusively utilized by desperate, impoverished men who had no property of their own, or by families facing financial ruin who essentially leased their sons out to wealthy families without male heirs.
That is wild. It's the equivalent of an aggressive corporate takeover where the acquired company's name is entirely erased.
That's a perfect analogy. For these sycophants to even bring this proposal to the Jia family implies a terrifying assumption.
Which is?
That the outside world views the Jia family as declining, cash poor, and desperate enough to sell off their most prominent son just to access the Zhang family's liquidity.
The ultimate insult.
The ultimate insult.
So the dowager's rejection is just a masterclass in aristocratic disdain. She says, "We don't even have enough people to serve by you. How can he go manage someone else's house?"
She is weaponizing their own wealth against the proposal.
She basically says, "Our son requires a small army of servants just to exist. Your household couldn't possibly accommodate his needs, let alone employ him."
She reframes the refusal. It's not an issue of pride. It's an issue of the Zhang family's inadequacy to host a Jia.
That is so deeply petty. I love it. And the text gives us another layer to this rejection, right? The Jias consider the Zhang family to be stingy, using the specific term seke.
Yes, say.
Now, if the Zhangs have wealth of tens of thousands, why are they dismissed as miserly, and why is that such a fatal flaw in this social circle?
In the ecosystem of old, established money, the mere accumulation of currency is not a marker of nobility.
It's not just about having a big bank account.
No, in fact, hoarding wealth is seen as a vulgar trait of the merchant class or new money. True aristocratic status is demonstrated through largesse, the continuous performative redistribution of wealth.
You have to spend it to show it.
Exactly. It is shown by maintaining hundreds of servants, hosting extravagant theatrical performances, patronizing temples, and throwing massive banquets.
Wealth is a verb, not a noun.
Precisely. You prove you are elite by how effortlessly you can afford to burn through capital. To be called stingy means the Zhang family does not participate in this economy of prestige. They just sit on their gold.
And to the Jia family, this proves the Zhangs lack the cultural sophistication required to merge with an ancient bureaucratic lineage.
Exactly. They aren't in the same league.
So the outside threat is neutralized. But right in the middle of this high society maneuvering over the Zhang proposal, we get a brilliant glimpse of internal political opportunism.
Ah, Wang Shifeng.
Yes, Wang Shifeng, the incredibly shrewd and calculating manager of the Jia household. She uses the rejection of the Zhangs to push her own agenda.
She never misses an opportunity.
She casually remarks to the dowager, "Why are we looking outside? We have a heaven-made match right here." And she's clearly signaling her support for Qiaojie, the hyper-competent crisis manager we discussed in the first segment.
And Wang Shifeng's calculation is entirely political here.
Oh, total.
She knows the dowager harbors a preference for another cousin, Dayu. But Dayu is frail, highly emotional, and unpredictable. Qiaojie is rational, stoic, and conforms perfectly to social expectations.
So Wang Shifeng is essentially advocating for a business partner who will maintain the stability of the household hierarchy.
Exactly, rather than an emotional variable that might disrupt it.
And the dowager, who sees every move on the board, just laughs it off. She plays the confused old woman to avoid committing to Shifeng's suggestion. It's high-level diplomatic fencing over a cup of tea.
It really is.
But while the matriarchs are debating theoretical alliances and the patriarchs are demanding philosophical purity, the immense, crushing weight of this entire system is trickling down to the most vulnerable members of the household.
It always flows downward.
It does. The abstract pressures of status and hierarchy eventually distill into literal life-or-death scenarios.
Which transitions us to the final and arguably most intense crisis in the source material.
We move from the psychological stress of the elite to a visceral, physical emergency involving an infant.
A very terrifying situation.
We are introduced to the sudden, terrifying illness of baby Qiaojie. This is Wang Shifeng's daughter, and the text provides a harrowing clinical description. The infant has a bluish face, and her nose and eyebrows are actively twitching.
Just horrifying for any parent.
The physician diagnoses the child with severe internal heat, and a condition called Jingfeng.
which translates to infantile convulsions or
Yeah.
seizures.
And in an 18th century context, the diagnosis of Jingfeng was an absolute nightmare.
Oh, absolute nightmare. Infant mortality was a pervasive reality, even in the wealthiest families. A fever severe enough to induce neurological spasms, which is what the twitching and cyanosis indicate, was often a death sentence.
The bluish face indicates a lack of oxygen.
The child is in immediate critical danger.
And the treatment prescribed by the doctor reveals an entirely different dimension of aristocratic anxiety.
The supply chain issue.
Yes. The doctor states that to clear this level of heat and toxicity, they require a specific pharmacological agent, genuine oxbazor.
Oxbazor.
Right, which is essentially a biliary calculus, a gallstone, extracted from the gallbladder of a cow. But the source text includes a vital caveat. The doctor explicitly warns the family that most oxbazor nowadays is fake.
Counterfeit medicine.
Think about the implications of that. I mean, for you listening right now, it's wild to think that even in the 18th century, the elite were dealing with counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The most powerful family in the capital is facing the imminent death of an infant, and their primary obstacle is a corrupt, fraudulent supply chain.
It perfectly illustrates the limits of their power, really.
How so?
They exist in an era where medical regulation is virtually non-existent. Oxbazor was astronomically expensive because it was rare. You couldn't guarantee when a slaughtered animal would actually possess one.
So the demand was huge.
Because the demand from wealthy families was so high, merchants routinely created sophisticated counterfeits using clay, animal blood, and various bitter herbs.
Right.
The doctor is basically telling them that throwing money at the problem won't solve it. They must leverage their elite network to source verifiable, authentic material, or the child will die.
Their wealth can't save them. Only their connections can.
Exactly.
And they utilize those connections. Wang Furen remembers that her sister, Zhu, an aunt, whose family originally rose to power through imperial merchant contracts, might actually possess authentic oxbazor.
And they managed to procure a piece.
They do. And then we are given this incredibly tense scene of the medicine being compounded. Wang Shifeng and most trusted maid, Pinger, is carefully preparing the decoction.
With some very intense ingredients.
The source text lists the ingredients they are combining with the oxbazor, and they are astounding. Crushed pearl, cinnabar, and ice borneal.
The inclusion of these specific ingredients speaks volumes about the intersection of wealth and medicine in this era.
Break those down for us.
Yeah.
Cinnabar.
Cinnabar is mercury sulfide. It was widely used in traditional medicine as a potent sedative to calm the spirit and stop convulsions, despite its heavy metal toxicity.
Yikes. And pearl.
Pearl, similarly, was believed to anchor the spirit and clear heat. But beyond their supposed pharmacological properties, these are materials of immense economic value.
They're literally grinding up jewelry and precious minerals.
Yes, the act of dissolving pearls and rare minerals into a medical broth is a profound display of economic mobilization. The family is liquidating its physical wealth into a biological intervention to save the heir's daughter.
The medicine pot is the physical embodiment of the family's immense power concentrated on a single fragile life.
That's exactly what it represents.
Which makes the inciting incident of the sabotage so utterly devastating. As Pinger is hovering over this priceless life-saving concoction, Huan walks into the room.
Huan.
Let's establish exactly who Huan is within this ecosystem, because it's vital. He is Baiyu's half-brother. They share the same father, Qiaojie. But Huan was born to a concubine, a woman named Zhao Yinyang.
And his lineage dictates his entire existence.
How does that work legally in the household?
In the strict Confucian hierarchy of the household, the principal wife, Wang Furen, is the legal mother of all children. The concubine is legally a servant, and her biological children are fundamentally subordinate to the children of the principal wife.
So he's part of the family, but not really.
He's a lesser part.
So Huan claims he just came into the room to look at the sick baby. But as he leans in, he clumsily knocks over the medicine pot.
Whoops.
It spills, and half the fire is extinguished. The text leaves little room for doubt here. This is not a tragic accident, it is a deliberate act of destruction.
It is a breathtaking moment of calculated malice.
Wang Shifeng's reaction is explosive. She curses him, calling him an enemy for lifetimes. She goes way beyond yelling at a clumsy child. She actively accuses his biological mother, the concubine, of orchestrating an assassination attempt.
She accuses them of trying to murder the baby to eliminate a branch of the family tree and gain an inheritance advantage.
And we really have to analyze why Huan would take such an extreme risk.
Yeah.
We cannot simply dismiss him as a sociopathic child, right?
No, we must look at the structural architecture of his resentment. This raises an important question.
Yeah.
How much of the household's tragedy is generated by its own strict exclusionary rules? As a concubine's son, Huan lives in a state of permanent institutionalized inferiority. He shares the Jia bloodline, he lives in the same luxurious compound, but he is denied the respect, the resources, and the affection that are lavished upon his half-brother, Baiyu.
He is a second-class citizen in his own living room.
Exactly. Think back to the marriage discussion with the dowager. The supreme authority of the household explicitly stated in front of the family that Baiyu was better than Huan.
She said that out loud.
Yes, that is the baseline reality of his life. He is constantly, systematically reminded that he is lesser.
So when he walks into that room and sees the entire machinery of the household mobilized to save Wang Sifeng's baby, when he sees them crushing pearls and deploying authentic ox bazaar for this child, while he is treated with disdain, the disparity must be suffocating.
The disparity radicalizes him. He cannot attack Wang Sifeng or the dowager directly. A physical assault on a superior would result in severe corporal punishment or outright exile.
The patriarchal structure makes a frontal assault impossible.
So he engages in asymmetric warfare.
Yes. He targets the vulnerable nexus of their power and their anxiety, the medicine pot. By knocking it over, he exerts a chaotic control over the people who control his life.
It is, and it forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question about this household.
Right, like how much of the tragedy and malice within these walls is actually generated by the exclusionary rules of the family itself? By creating a legally enforced underclass of concubines and half-siblings. The Jia family has essentially engineered and bred saboteurs within their own ranks. The system creates the very monsters that terrorize it.
That is a highly perceptive synthesis of the text.
And I see a direct conceptual line connecting this grand act of sabotage to a much smaller detail we glossed over in the very first segment.
Oh, which one?
When Shu Aunt was suffering from her psychosomatic liver pain, she was massaged by a servant named Qiaojie.
Right.
But the source text includes a brief, seemingly throwaway line explaining that Qiaojie was not her original name. Her name used to be Shangling.
Ah, yes.
It was changed by the angry new daughter-in-law, Jin Gi. Why? Simply because the perfect daughter, Bao Chai, had originally given the servant that name.
Jingi changed the name to erase Bao Chai's influence and assert her own dominance over a human being who had no power to resist.
And that is the exact same mechanism of behavior we see with Huan spilling the medicine.
It really is.
Whether it is a wealthy new bride maliciously erasing a servant's identity by altering her name, or a marginalized half-brother risking a baby's life by ruining a priceless prescription, the dynamic is identical. People who feel insecure or trapped within this rigid hierarchy use petty indirect violence to gain a modicum of control.
When you are forbidden from changing the rules of the house, your only recourse is to break the things the house values.
Wow, that's it, exactly.
The violence doesn't disappear just because the rules of decorum forbid it. It sublimates. It goes underground.
It turns into symptoms.
Yes. It becomes psychosomatic organ pain. It becomes agonizing, weaponized academic pressure. It becomes stolen identities and spilled medicine. The gilded cage doesn't keep the chaos out. It traps the chaos inside, forcing it to bounce off the walls until it injures someone.